A scare for DJ. DJ knew something was wrong when he was within sight of his home late that afternoon. Grandpa Dillon was waiting at the shade of the lumbar poplars across the creek. The old man tucked his pocket New Testament into the front of his bib overalls and waved. The boy waved back. He couldn't hear above the noisy water gurgling over the stones. He quickly removed his shoes and socks, tied the shoelaces together, and swung the shoes around his neck. He picked up Coco in his arms and hurriedly waded across the creek. "Something wrong, Grandpa?" the boy asked, putting the bear cub gently on the bank and tightening his grip on the chain. The old man snorted, and pounded his blackthorn cane on small stones beside the creek. "Your father's been ranting and raving ever since he got home from work." DJ felt fear shoot through his body. "What about? Did Dad hear about what Coco did in the small store?" "No, that's not it. But what'd that cub do?" "Oh, nothing serious. Besides, Alfred and I cleaned it up. What about Dad?" "The mill's threatening to go on strike, and that's means there'll be no need for choker setters in the timber. Your father would be out of work." "Maybe they won't strike," the boy said hopefully. "They threatened to do that a couple years ago, and then they didn't do it, remember?" "Just the same, I thought I'd come down and warn you so you don't rile him none." "I'll be careful. Thanks, Grandpa." "Come on, Coco." Dad looked up when the boy entered the side door into the kitchen. "You're late getting your chores done, DJ." "I'll get them done fast." "No supper till you do." "I know." DJ put the bear on the floor. "And another thing, you can't go off and leave that dog anymore. He's been whining and carrying on because you left him. I thought it would be best only to take the cub." "Well, you thought wrong. You wanted both the bear and the dog, and you can take them both with you. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." "Now get to those chores and then take a bath. We're driving into town." "Tonight?" "Yes, tonight." DJ had a sickening feeling he knew why, yet he tried to think of how to find out without really asking his dad. "But won't all the stores be closed?" "Not going to any store. We're going to go see Hannah Higgins and her little Priscilla." "Oh, Dad." "And you be nice to that little girl, or I'll larrup you good, even if you are near to man size. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." Grandpa came into the bathroom where DJ was. The old man whispered, "A man needs to talk to a woman sometimes, especially when he's hurt like your father is over this strike thing. He'll be okay." An hour later, the boy felt uncomfortable in his only good white shirt, which was already too short for him. Dad wore a yellow bow tie with tiny black dots, a lime green cowboy shirt and with fancy embroidery, and a clean pair of blue jeans. Mom used to say Dad had many good qualities, but choosing good clothes combinations wasn't one of them. She had always laid out his clothes for funerals and weddings and other special events. Dad didn't explain why they were going to see Mrs. Higgins, but DJ had a sickening feeling. Dad really wanted to ask her to marry him. Of course, maybe Grandpa was right and Dad just needed to talk to a woman. Yet the boy doubted that. DJ didn't want his father to remarry. But the boy knew better than to say anything when Dad was in one of his black moods. Priscilla Higgins opened the door to Dad's knock. She flipped on the light porch, though it wasn't quite dark yet. "Mom, it's DJ Dillon and his dad, Mr. Dillon." Priscilla's shriek went through the boy's body like a fishhook through the thumb. He didn't like being called Davy anymore, either. It sounded too babyish, he thought. Everyone started calling him DJ or David except for Pris. The boy thought maybe she did that on purpose because he didn't like it. Mrs. Higgins didn't come until her daughter shrieked 2 more times. Dad was nervously twisting one of the embroidered flowers on the front of his cowboy shirt. He tried to look through the screen door. As Dad looked across the living room toward the back of the house, DJ saw Pris look at him and make a face. She was always doing that. Nobody ever caught her. Finally, Mrs. Higgins walked briskly through the living room and towards the front door. She was still touching her short blonde hair, and her blue eyes lit up. She was sort of pretty in a way. She smiled and said, "Sam, DJ, what a surprise." "I had to see you, Hannah," Dad said softly. He had shaved and smelled of too much aftershave lotion. Are we interrupting anything?" "No, Sam. Pris and I were just finishing up the supper dishes, but there's a little lemon meringue pie left, and I could put on a pot of coffee." "No, thanks," Dad answered. DJ glanced up at his father in real surprise. Since Dad had started calling on Mrs. Higgins, he always arrived in time for supper. She was one of the best cooks in Stony Ridge, and her house was always neat and clean. The boy couldn't imagine turning down dessert. "No pie, Sam? Well, how about you, DJ?" The boy's mouth almost ached with the memory of the taste of Mrs. Higgins' pies, but a glance at his father told him to say no. "Thank you kindly, but I've had supper and dessert." "My stars, where are my manners? Come in, come in. Priscilla, you can let the rest of the dishes dry themselves. Sam, DJ, sit down, make yourselves at home." "Thank you, Hannah, but if it's all same to you, I'll stand." My, something important must have happened. "No, leastwise not yet. DJ, why don't you let Pris show you the flowers in the yard?" The girl shook her head. "Getting too dark, Mr. Dillon," Mrs. Higgins said firmly. "Take a flashlight, Pris." DJ stayed well away from the little girl as she led him outside. This was the longest time he'd ever been around her without her kicking him in the shins or throwing a dirt clod at him. Mom used to say Priscilla was seeking attention because she was an only child. The DJ didn't believe that because he was an only child and he didn't do that. Pris seemed unusually quiet. She led the way along the concrete sidewalk, past the roses and pansy beds towards the backyard. DJ watched carefully, but the little girl didn't try to reach for anything to throw at him. She sat down on the back step and clasped her hands around her knees. "You know what it means when big folks make kids go outside, don't you?" DJ leaned back against the back of the house and asked, "What does it mean?" "It means something important that they don't want us to hear, such as the women in the church being right about what? Your dad marrying my mom? Where'd you ever get a crazy notion like that? It's not crazy. My mother and your father are not like us kids. They need somebody else." That's what the churchwoman said, and my mother agrees. DJ was feeling sickness creeping over him. He swallowed hard but didn't say anything. Pris continued, "But she's not going to marry him." The boy pushed himself away from the house. "What makes you say that?" "Because since Paul Stagg came to pastor our church, Mom's been going there all the time, even to prayer meetings." "So?" DJ challenged. "Mom says a Christian shouldn't marry someone who's not a believer. It has something to do with what the church women called not being unequally yoked. I heard Mother telling some of the women at the quilting and Bible study last week that she'd made up her mind. DJ snapped, but he hasn't even asked her yet. Maybe he never will. The little girl shrugged and scuffed her heel at the back of the sidewalk. She wouldn't, even if he did. DJ was ready to shout with happiness. You sure? Positive. If he asks her, she's going to turn him down flat. DJ was ready to jump about on the small, neat lawn, but he held himself in check. Then another thought hit him. The boy felt his insides grow cold. If Dad did ask Mrs. Higgins to marry him and she said no, Dad was going to be so mad there'd be no reasoning with him. Pris jumped up. Listen. DJ cocked his head. Dad's voice was rising angrily, even in the still air. Oh, no, Pris said softly. Yeah, DJ agreed. In a moment, the boy and the girl exchanged glances as the front door slammed shut and heavy footsteps sounded rapidly across the small wooded porch. DJ turned to Pris. He may even forget he brought me. He started to run. Bye, Pris called after him. The boy ran fast and slid into the front seat of the pickup just as Dad started the motor and slammed the truck into gear. The pickup jerked away from the curb so hard the boy's neck snapped against the back seat cushion. Dad didn't even seem to notice his son was beside him. That preacher, Dad exploded, pounding the steering wheel with his open right hand. It's all his fault. I'm going to teach him to stay out of people's business. DJ had seen what his father's violent temper could do when he got mad at another grown-up. The boy's lips moved silently. Oh, Lord, Paul Stagg's a nice man. Please don't let my father hurt him. And that is the end of chapter 4. Tomorrow we'll be reading in the City Bears Adventures, chapter 5, A Film is Coming to Town. Whoa, it sounds like they're going to be making a movie. That should be interesting. So I'm glad I was able to get through this story tonight without the phone turning the camera off. And I want to pray blessings on you. And just know God loves you greatly. And I love you too. So whatever you do, keep dreaming.